Hey everyone! Before we dive into today's story, I could use your support. Our platform's been losing some momentum lately, and hitting that subscribe button is a fantastic way to help us keep going. It's quick, free, and ensures we can continue delivering awesome content. Your encouragement means the world to us. Let's keep this community thriving together. Thank you so much. Now, let's get into it. I'm using a throwaway account for obvious reasons, with certain details tweaked to protect my identity. Hi, I'm Lisa, 38, female, and I need to share something that's been weighing on me. Ever heard of those families where one kid is the golden child and the other is practically invisible? That's my story. Life was pretty normal until I was 8. I was an only child, and while my parents weren't overly affectionate, they were there, I guess. Mom would help with my math homework, and Dad would sometimes take me boating on Lake Huron. We weren't perfect, but things were okay. Then one night changed everything. I remember my Aunt Susan showing up at 3 a.m. telling me to pack a bag because Mom was in the hospital. My sister Emily was arriving early, 2 months early. The weeks that followed were a blur of hospital visits and whispered conversations. Emily was tiny, like a doll, but hooked up to machines and wires. I wasn't allowed to get close or touch her. That's when I first felt it, a barrier growing between me and my family. When Emily finally came home, our house became a sterile fortress. Mom was obsessed with cleanliness, industrial-grade disinfectants, hand sanitizer everywhere, and constant scrubbing. The sharp smell of bleach still makes my stomach turn. But what really got to me was how I was treated. If I so much as sniffled, I was shipped off to Grandma Rose's or Aunt Susan's house. One cough, pack your bags, a sneeze, off to Grandma's. At first I didn't mind. Grandma Rose baked pies and Aunt Susan had an amazing collection of mystery novels I'd read through, but kids pick up on things. Soon I realized I wasn't being sent on fun sleepovers. I was being treated like a danger, like my very presence could harm my precious sister. I tried everything to win my parents' attention in a positive way. Straight A's. Mom barely glanced up from Emily's medical schedule. Won the school science fair with a project on solar power. Dad just asked if I could store it in the shed because Emily was sensitive to paper dust. Is that even real? The real blow came when I was 12. I'd spent months practicing for the school talent show, teaching myself to play 1,000 miles on the piano. Maybe a bit cliché, but I loved it. On the night of the performance, Emily had a slight fever, 99.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Guess who had no one in the audience? 2 weeks later, the whole family, including both sets of grandparents, showed up for Emily's 10-minute clarinet recital where she butchered Twinkle, Twinkle. Emily learned early how to work the system. By age 7, her health issues were mostly gone, but that didn't stop her. A headache, she'd skip school, tired, someone else, guess who, had to do her chores. Stressed about a quiz? Mom would call the school to get an extension. I started retreating to my room, diving into books about art and collectibles. My room became my haven, especially since Emily claimed she was allergic to my vanilla candle, so she stayed away. You know what's messed up? When she faked being sick, I was secretly relieved. At least I'd get sent to Grandma's where someone would actually ask about my day. Grandma Rose got me hooked on vintage accessories. She had a stunning collection of costume pieces that I'd sort and catalog. Looking back, it feels like fate. The worst part wasn't even the obvious favoritism. It was how they rewrote the narrative to justify it. Emily needs extra care because she had a tough start. Lisa's so independent. Lisa gets that her sister has unique needs. No, I didn't get it. I was a kid wondering why being healthy made me less worthy of love. Those years shaped me. The constant message that I was somehow a risk or a burden doesn't just vanish. But it made me self-reliant. When no one cares about your grades or celebrates your wins, you learn to be your own champion. High school? Some people love it, some hate it. For me, it was my escape plan. While Emily was building her drama kingdom in middle school, I was plotting my way out. And let me tell you, nothing motivates you like knowing no one's got your back. Remember how I organized Grandma's accessories? That taught me precision and focus. In high school, I applied that to everything. My desk was a masterpiece, color-coded notes, detailed study schedules, everything in its place. Emily called me OCD freak. Cute, sis. But being invisible has perks. No one's watching your wins or losses, so you can do whatever you want. I joined every club that didn't clash with my part-time job at Maggie's Cafe. Shout out to Maggie, the owner, who remembered my birthday when my parents didn't. Debate team? Done. President of the Honor Society? Done. Editor of the school paper? Done. Debate was where I found my voice. There's something thrilling about dismantling an argument with calm precision. It also taught me negotiation skills, which I didn't know I'd need later. I won state championships twice. Both times, my parents were at Emily's junior varsity volleyball games. She was a bench warmer. The game changer came junior year. I aced the S8. Perfect score, 1,600. Less than 1% of test takers get that. I stared at the results for 20 minutes, convinced it was a glitch. I rushed home to tell my parents. Dumb move. Mom was helping Emily with her history homework. The conversation went like this. Mom, I got a perfect SAT score. That's nice, Lisa, but keep it down. Emily's focusing. She has a test tomorrow. Emily smirked. Yeah, some of us actually have to work for our grades, Miss Perfect. Mom, Emily, don't worry. You're just a different kind of learner. I still have those SAT results somewhere. Never made it to the fridge. But Emily's B- in history? That got a "we're so proud" magnet. College apps were something. I applied to 15 schools in secret, wrote my own essays, got my own letters of recommendation, and sorted out financial aid alone. My counselor, Mrs. Patel, was a lifesaver when my parents were too busy to help with FAFSA. Then the acceptances rolled in. Stanford, Columbia, Dartmouth, Michigan, all with scholarships. I hid them in a locked box under my bed, knowing Emily would turn it into her drama if she found out. If Lisa goes to Stanford, I'll be all alone, or some nonsense. When I got a full ride offer from UMIC, Emily made the JV dance team. Guess which one got a family celebration at Red Lobster? Hint, I ate instant noodles in my room, but that scholarship was my ticket out. Tuition, room, board, even books covered. I could finally leave a house where I was either ignored or inconvenient. The day I got my acceptance, I went to my favorite spot in the library, a quiet corner by a window overlooking the river, and cried for an hour. Not sad tears, relief. When I told my parents I was going to UMich, they were thrilled, for the wrong reasons. Mom, Michigan? That's so far. What if Emily needs you? Dad, Hope you're not expecting us to pay for anything. Emily's dance competitions are expensive. Emily, can I have your room? I need it for my Insta reels. That summer, I worked double shifts at Maggie's cafe to save up. Maggie always slipped me extra tips and sent me home with leftover cobbler. She taught me how to spot genuine people in a world full of phonies. "Sweetheart," she'd say, "in cafes and in life, the loudest ones usually have the least to offer." Move-in day at Michigan. My parents couldn't make it. Emily had a dance recital. Aunt Susan drove me, helped set up my dorm, and handed me $500. "Your Grandma Rose saved this for you," she said. "She's so proud." I later found out Grandma had been stashing that money from her pension checks. That first night in my dorm, I vowed to build a life so incredible that being ignored would be unthinkable. Not for revenge, not to prove anything to my family, but for the 8-year-old girl sent away for coughing. College was a whirlwind of late nights, cheap noodles, and glorious freedom. I graduated summa cum laude from Michigan. My parents didn't notice. They were too busy helping Emily switch to her third college in 2 years. But here's where the story takes a turn. I landed an entry-level job at Hawthorne & Sons Auction House in Detroit. Not the real name, but you get the idea. A high-end place with old money clients. I started in their estate sales division, cataloging wealthy people's belongings after they passed. Not glamorous, but it paid. My first few months were routine, logging silverware, sorting antique furniture. Then came the Wentworth estate. Mrs. Wentworth, a childless widow, left behind what everyone thought was a massive collection of costume jewelry. Piles of it. But my time with Grandma Rose's collection kicked in. While sorting, I spotted a deco-style pin. It wasn't flashy, but something felt off. It was too heavy for costume jewelry, and the clasp was too intricate for a fake. I spent my lunch break researching vintage makers' marks and stayed late using the company's antique databases. The more I dug, the more I was convinced. This wasn't fake. It was the real deal. As the newbie, I knew no one would take me seriously if I claimed we had a treasure. So I did what debate taught me. I built an airtight case. I spent 2 weeks during breaks and evenings studying deco jewelry authentication, even dipping into my meager savings for an online gemology course. Finally, I pitched my boss, Mr. Coleman. I brought a full presentation, photos, historical records, the work. "Mr. Coleman, I think we've got something big in the Wentworth collection." He barely looked up from his emails. "Lisa, we've already tagged those as costume pieces." "I know, but these marks match Cartier's 1920s designs." He finally looked up. "Where'd you learn this?" "I did some research." Long story short, the costume pin sold for $52,000 at auction, a rare piece from a 1920s European collection. After that, Coleman started trusting me. He gave me more items to authenticate. Suddenly, my useless hobby of sorting vintage accessories had value. I threw myself into learning everything about antique jewelry, online courses, weekends at estate sales, a notebook tracking authentication methods. My apartment became a jewelry nerd's paradise, walls covered with Hallmark charts and certification guides. The auction house noticed. I was spotting valuable pieces others missed, building ties with collectors, and learning the market. My commission checks grew. For the first time, I wasn't just scraping by, I was saving. My family? Still clueless. At Sunday dinners, which I still attended like an idiot, It went like this. Mom: Lisa's still at that little vintage store, right? Me: Auction house, Mom. I just authenticated a rare Van Cleef piece. Emily: Speaking of jewelry, look at this necklace I got at the mall. I stopped caring. I'd found something that was mine. Something I was damn good at, not tied to being Emily's sister or the family letdown. Then came the Harrington collection, 2 years into my job. A big deal estate from an old money family, lots of industry hype. I was on the team cataloging their jewelry. That's when I found it. A plain-looking Art Nouveau pendant everyone else overlooked. I spent 3 sleepless days researching it. Turned out, it was from a renowned Parisian jeweler's private collection, thought lost in the 1940s. It sold for $275,000. Coleman called me into his office. I thought I was getting a promotion. Instead, he said, "Lisa, you're too good for this place. You should start your own authentication business." I laughed it off at first. Me? A business? With what money? But the idea stuck. I started taking freelance authentication gigs on the side. Word got around that I had an eye for detail. Private collectors started reaching out. One night, surrounded by jewelry, books, and tools in my tiny apartment, it hit me. I could do this. So I did something reckless, took out a loan against my car, drained my savings, and rented a tiny office above a noodle shop. The rent was cheap because it always smelled like sesame oil, and the Wi-Fi only worked in one corner. But it was mine. The first few months were terrifying. I'd wake up at 4 a.m., calculating how long until I went broke. Loan payments felt like a noose. My office furniture, a thrift store folding table, and a chair I found on the street. Don't worry, I sanitized it. But in the world of high-end jewelry, reputation is everything, and my auction house experience gave me a head start. I started small, authenticating for local antique dealers at lower rates than the big firms. My precision got noticed. 6 months in, a big break. A dealer I knew from the auction house asked me to authenticate a set of Victorian-era lockets. The owner wanted verification before selling. It was a huge collection, spanning 4 generations. I worked on it for 2 weeks straight, barely sleeping. I found 3 rare pieces misidentified as replicas. The owner was thrilled, paying my fee plus a 12% commission on the sale, $92,000. More than I'd made in 2 years. Suddenly, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Collectors heard about my knack for spotting hidden gems. Estate attorneys needed advice on inherited jewelry. Even my old auction house sent me work. I'm pretty sure Coleman was quietly spreading the word. By year 2, I hired my first employee, Tara, a gemology grad who reminded me of myself, brilliant but overlooked for being shy. She's now my lead authenticator and worth her weight in diamonds. The business grew fast. We moved to a proper downtown office. No more noodle shop smell. I built a team of experts. We became known for finding overlooked treasures. You'd be shocked how many priceless pieces get mistaken for junk in attics. Keeping it from my family was tricky. They thought I worked at a vintage shop. Emily would make snarky comments at dinner. "Lisa, I've got some old earrings for goodwill. Want them for your little store?" Me, fresh off authenticating a $1.5 million Fabergé brooch. "Sure, I'll check them out." Mom introduced me as my other daughter. She works with old trinkets or something. Meanwhile, I was featured in a trade magazine, under my company name, thankfully. It was almost fun keeping the secret, like a private game. I'd wear real Tiffany pieces to family dinners, seeing if anyone noticed. They didn't. Emily once bragged about her $150 Fossil watch, while I wore a vintage Cartier worth more than her car. Managing growth was the real challenge. By year 5, we had offices in Detroit, Chicago, and Boston. I was on planes more than in my own bed. We built a reputation for discretion. Rich people want their jewelry authenticated quietly. The money was huge. I had to hire financial advisors to keep up, but I kept my lifestyle modest. A nice but not fancy house, a practical car, my one splurge, my home office, top-tier authentication gear, a security system to rival a bank, a custom vault. My family thought I was pinching pennies to help them. Mom would say, "It's so kind of Lisa to pitch in. She must be living on canned soup." Meanwhile, I'd just earned a commission bigger than their house's value. Success is weird. You can't explain it to people who've always seen you as less. It's like describing a sunset to someone who's only seen gray. Every Sunday, I'd go to my parents for dinner, playing Lisa, the humble vintage shop girl. I'd spend mornings on calls with London collectors, afternoons authenticating million-dollar pieces, and evenings eating Mom's overdone meatloaf, while Emily rambled about her entry-level PR job, like how she nailed a PowerPoint for her boss. One Sunday stands out. I just closed a massive deal authenticating a lost Tiffany piece that sat in a vault for 50 years. The commission, 7 figures. I drove to my parents, still buzzing. "Mom, Lisa, you okay? Your clothes look a bit plain." Me, in a $3,500 wool sweater chosen for its low-key look. "Just saving money." Emily, "If you'd gotten a real career instead of messing with old trinkets." Dad, "Emily, be kind. Not everyone can be as accomplished as you." I nearly laughed into my meatloaf. Around then, I started sending my parents anonymous monthly payments. $6,000. Aunt Susan told me they were struggling with Emily's student loans and medical bills. Mom mentioned they might sell the house. I couldn't let that happen, despite everything. They thought I was giving $1,200 and living on oatmeal. Emily took credit for inspiring family help. Watching Emily spend my money was wild. She showed up with designer bags, claiming they were outlet steals. They weren't. I can spot a real Prada from a mile away. She posted about her blessed life on social media, taking lavish trips. I stayed quiet. The irony was too good. Then came the MBA saga. Emily announced she wanted an MBA from a fancy private university. Mom called me crying about costs. I suggested state schools. Mom, "Oh, Lisa, you don't get it. Emily needs a certain caliber." Then, "Could you maybe increase your monthly help for a bit?" Bumped it to $8,000. It didn't dent my accounts. But hearing them praise Emily for taking charge of her education while assuming I was starving to help, that stung. The kicker. I was giving a guest lecture at Emily's dream school on luxury goods authentication. My family didn't know. I had to skip Sunday dinner, claiming a work trip. My success felt like a double life. By day, I ran a multi-million-dollar business. By Sunday night, I was just Lisa, the let-down daughter. The breaking point came at Thanksgiving. I was tired of Emily's jabs about my sad job, Mom's apologies for my simple life, Dad's hints I needed a real career. I knew it'd end dramatically. I just didn't expect it to blow up so spectacularly. 2 days before, Mom called, sobbing about her sciatica. Cooking for 20 guests felt impossible. I was done pretending her dry turkey was edible. Me, "I'll handle the food." I'll get it catered. Mom. Lisa, we can't afford that. Me. I've been saving. It's fine. Mom, worried. You're not taking out loans, are you? I hired a top-tier catering company I use for business events. Their food is next level. You'd never cook again. It cost more than my parents thought I made in 3 months. But whatever. Thanksgiving morning, I was in a great mood. I brought my laptop to monitor a major Tokyo auction, a rare Art Nouveau bracelet I was authenticating for a client. The food arrived perfectly. Gourmet dishes that silenced even Emily. Emily. Boxed stuffing? Really, Lisa? Mom's is better. From the girl who once burned microwave popcorn. Mom apologized for not cooking, but everyone loved the food. Emily shut up after trying the truffle mashed potatoes, which cost more per serving than her weekly budget. I stepped away during dessert to check the auction. It was heating up, and I needed to be ready if my client won. I sat up in my old bedroom, unchanged since high school, while Emily's had been redone 4 times. I left my authentication software open, showing account details and deals. Emily barged in, no knock, to borrow my charger. She saw my screen and thought she'd hit the jackpot to humiliate me. Emily, grinning, "Let's show everyone what Lisa's really doing." She spun the laptop around, expecting to shame me with some petty vintage shop nonsense. The room went dead quiet. My screen showed account balance, $13.2 million, pending contract, $510,000, recent deal, $1.4 million quarterly profit, $4.8 million. Emily's face cycled through shock, confusion, and something like seasickness. She actually wobbled. Emily whispering, "This can't be real." Mom, "Emily, what's wrong?" Emily, voice breaking. She's loaded. Lisa's rich." Chaos erupted. The silence got heavier. Mom started laughing, nervous. "No way. Lisa works at that little vintage shop." I stood slowly, smoothing my plain $4,000 sweater. "Actually, Mom, I own one of the top jewelry authentication firms in the country. Have for years. Those vintage shop comments? I authenticate pieces worth millions. That little business you never asked about? It's got offices in 3 states. Dad choked on his wine. Aunt Susan dropped her spoon. Uncle Tom coughed up a storm. Mom's laugh turned to something else. Her face went red, then blotchy. She stood so fast her chair fell. Mom shouting, "You're sitting on millions and let us struggle?" Me, "Struggle? I send you $8,000 a month." Mom, "While hoarding millions? Your sister has loans." There it was. "No, congratulations." "No, we're proud." Just fury that I hadn't handed it all to Emily.